right, everyone, we're back with another Ramp Careers Daily Update. Today, I'm joined with Manoj, my co-founder. Manoj, how you doing?
Doing well, Danny. How are you?
Good. We're here on another Friday Eve without Mitch, so we miss him. We miss him.
Dude, this week's been flying by so fast. It feels like we said Happy Monday like yesterday.
Yeah, seriously, it's one of those weeks where it's just cruising by. We're going to stick with our most recent series on how to answer common interview questions. And today we've got a good one. It's a question that more than likely you'll get on most SDR interviews. It's tell me about a time when you received some constructive feedback and how you responded to it. So before we jump in here, let's talk about what they're really asking. So this is a behavioral interview question. And what they're really driving at is, are you coachable? Do you get defensive? How self-aware are you? Are you humble? And does your past, is it, they're using this as an example of your past trying to predict the future for you working on the team. So Manoj, I know you had an idea of how to set this up in a framework for our folks, our audience to think about as they start to answer this question. Do you mind walking us through that framework?
Yeah, fairly straightforward, right? It's like any good answer, context is important. So it's helpful to set up the context and talk about a specific scenario that triggered this whole chain of events, right? So you can say one of my tasks, one of my duties was to do X, or I was working on this project and it was a very important thing for the company. Just sets up the context, and then you can go in one level deeper and describe what exactly was expected of you, right? What was your task? And then what was your outcome? I was asked to do X, Y, and Z, and I delivered something else. And then the next thing is how that feedback was solicited. If you had asked for it, even better. If not, you can just say that either I asked for feedback and I received X, or just during the normal course of business, where we do a debrief at the end of each project, this is what I was told. And then the last and the most important step is you need to think about how you reacted to the feedback initially, but also what you did with that feedback. How did you incorporate that into the next assignment or the next project that you had to go through? So really 4 steps, set up the context, and then go ahead and describe what your task was and what your outcome was, and then describe how you received the feedback, whether you asked for it, great if you did, if not, what was the forum for receiving the feedback, and then the last thing is, what did you do with it? How did you react to it, A, initially, and B, how did you incorporate that feedback into the next task or next assignment? But Danny, to make things clear, do you have an example, an answer?
Yeah. So that's good. That's a good framework. I think that's the right framework for our audience to apply to this question. So I'll give an example, though I don't think anybody should copy this example. I'll give an example of one time of an answer that I heard that was particularly great when answering this type of question. A great answer that I got in an interview, started 3 to 5 years ago, is actually somebody that was interviewing for an SDR role, and they were moving laterally into another SDR role with the path to move up quickly to an AE role. This was somebody who answered it something like this. I was a top performer in my last role, and as a top performer, I was super focused on just getting my job done, hitting my quota, achieving above quota, and then moving on, not worrying about anybody else, just worrying about myself. It was not because I don't want to be a team player. It was just because I was super, super focused on my role. And my manager pulled me aside about 6 months into my job there and said, "Hey, look, I love the way that you're performing. You're a great performer, but you tend to rub off on some other people as somewhat of a lone wolf. Folks think it's really hard to approach you. Do you think you could work on over the next few months being more approachable and more of a team player and more engaged in team discussions?" Looked at I really took a hard look at myself, and I thought that feedback was accurate. And I really wanted to answer it. And at first I was a bit defensive. I really thought, hey, I'm doing my job and I'm doing it really well. Others shouldn't really care about it. But the team environment that had been established warranted me to kind of take a look at myself and say, this is not an acceptable behavior, or I can do better in these areas. So I really made a point to fix that over the next 6 months of my time there. And what I did was I allowed every new hire to sit by me during training so they could get a glimpse at what I do well and what I don't do so well, and some of the learnings that I have. And that really helped me open up to not only new folks, but helped me open up to old folks as well, who could see me being approachable, and allowed me to be it allowed me to be more approachable overall. So what I like about this answer is it's very self-aware, right? It wasn't your typical like you need to do better in all of these avenues. It was somebody who was achieving really well, but maybe had a behavioral component or behavioral issue. It was also very self-aware, and it's not an easy thing to talk about when you're called out for something behavioral rather than performance. It's not as straightforward, and that allows me as the manager, as the hiring manager, to get a glimpse into what type of person they are. They admitted, a little bit defensible at the beginning, but they are self-aware and they were humble enough to kind of fix it. And the way they fixed it was great. They sat down with every new performer or every new salesperson and allowed them to get a glimpse into their process. So I thought that was a really solid answer. I have a question for you though. How important do you think this question is, or answering this question well is, in the interview process overall?
If you answer this question well, you'll get some serious brownie points because you've demonstrated that you're coachable, which I think is probably one of the most important qualities of a SDR or a BDR. I mean, let alone forget about those two roles, any early career role in general, right? Because you don't know many things. Most of what you're expected to do, you may have to learn on the job. Of course, programs like ours that help candidates, but there's still going to be something to be said about doing it in the real world and reacting in real time to prospects, your revenue targets, and so on. And so the bright side of doing a good job is it'll probably leave a very good impression in the mind of the interviewer. On the flip side, there's not very many ways that you can botch the answer to this question when you really think about it, because there's always going to be a time where someone gave you some feedback. So there's not really many ways that you can botch it. The worst thing you can do is, instead of focusing your answer on how you received feedback and how you turn things around, focusing too much on a time where you didn't deliver results, or you did a shoddy job or a poor job, but not balancing the other half of the equation, which is, did you receive feedback and what did you do with it, right? So you want to quickly focus on the feedback and the aftermath of it and not spend way too much time on how you did poorly. And so, all things equal, I think this is a tough question to completely botch. You're somewhat prepped because, like I said, it really is 3 questions in one question, right? You got to think about a time where you didn't do that great, because you're not going to get constructive feedback if you're crushing it, because clearly there's something you need to work on. So folks that may have done a little bit of thinking should be able to answer that question. But like I said, it's you got to be careful not to focus too much on the negative. But I think this is a question where there's a lot of upside, and if you don't answer this well, will someone hold this against you too much? Maybe not. But like I said, there's a bit of downside, but a lot of upside.
Yeah, agreed. Overall, somebody may defer to performance, and if you're going to be a top performer, a little bit more than being coachable, but being coachable is a key component of the role. Being a team player is a key component of the role, and being humble, especially if it's in the guidelines or in the culture documents or on the culture page of some company's website, will end up being a key component as well. So watch out for that. Cool. Well, I think we've done a good job with this one. We could probably wrap with that. So we'll catch you tomorrow on another Ramp Careers Daily Update. This is Danny and Manoj signing off for today.